Most coaches with a webinar that isn't converting fall into one of two categories. They jumped in before the business is ready for it, or they built the webinar incorrectly. Meanwhile, the coaches that should be running webinars right now aren't. Some are waiting on things that don't actually matter, and others don't know how much revenue they're leaving on the table by not running a webinar. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly where you stand and what you can do about it. Now, let's talk about the wrong reasons to wait before you run a webinar. I talk to coaches every week, and the ones that run webinars but haven't moved, almost every single one of them says the same thing. Larger audience, I need, ad budget, I need a better offer. And these three things come up almost every single time. First, the audience size problem. Most coaches believe they need a large following before a webinar makes sense. 50,000 followers on Instagram, a big email list, thousands of YouTube subscribers. So they put the webinar on hold, they keep posting, they keep telling themselves that they will make a webinar when their audience is larger. But here's the problem with that thinking. Audience size is not what determines whether a webinar converts. Engagement and audience quality is what actually matters. A coach with an email list of 3,000 engaged subscribers who have been consuming the content for 12 months will run a more profitable webinar than a coach with 80,000 followers on Instagram who scroll past their content without stopping or actually, engaging with their content. Second, the ad budget problem. The coach is holding off because they don't have the money set aside for paid ads or making the same mistake. The first few webinars you should be running on organic traffic, your email list, your Instagram stories, your YouTube audience. First, validate it, then you can scale after. Lastly, the perfect offer problem. Most coaches who have been in business for more than 12 months and are doing consistent revenue don't have an offer problem. They have a conversion system problem. So the bigger question now is, should you run a webinar? There are 4 things that your business needs before a webinar funnel makes sense. If you have all 4, you're ready to start building a webinar right now. First is a proven offer, not a new offer, a proven one. Someone has paid you, they've gone through the program, gotten a result, and you have documented proof. Here's how you know if your offer is proven. If you have closed the same offer at least 5 times without changing the core of what you're selling, the price, the delivery, the promise, and at least some of these people have gotten results. If you're still changing what you sell based on how the market responds, the offer is not proven. The webinar presentation is built around transformation selling. You are showing your audience a before and an after. The gap between those two states is what makes people buy. If you cannot point to a real result from a student who paid you, you do not have the social proof to build that presentation correctly. Here's what the proven offer looks like in practice. A real estate investing coach who has sold the same $5,000 wholesaling program to 12 clients. 6 of them have already closed their first deal. The offer has not changed. People are consistently paying for it. Compare that to a coach that has sold 3 different versions of their program in the last 6 months, and he's not sure which one converts. That offer isn't proven yet. Second is an existing audience. People who already know you exist, consume your content, and have some level of trust built up. What actually matters is audience quality. Have they been consuming your content for more than a few weeks? Do they respond when you send an email? Do they comment on your post? Do they know who you are and what you stand for? A warm audience that trusts you will fill a webinar room. A large but cold audience will not. When you are evaluating whether your audience is ready for webinars, stop counting followers and start asking yourself how many people in your audience would actually show up if you announce the live training tomorrow. Here's what the math looks like when the audience is high quality. An engaged email list of 5,000 people can produce 50 to 800 registrants for a webinar. Of those, 200 to 300 will show up live. And assume that you close 20% of that room, you're looking at 40 to 60 sales in a single session. At a $2,000 offer, that is $80,000 to $120,000 in revenue from one webinar run. The coaches sitting on an audience of that quality and are not running a webinar are leaving a lot of money on the table. Third is consistent revenue. It takes a proven offer, an existing audience, and a coach who can deliver a result and a system that converts more of that audience consistently. Building and running a webinar funnel requires time, investment, and the bandwidth to run it consistently. If you are still fighting to generate consistent cash flow in your business, you need to focus on that first before you can add another layer of complexity. Coaches doing $30,000 to $500,000 a month have already solved the fundamental business problems. The webinar system takes what's already working and scales it even further. Fourth is social proof. Results you can use inside a presentation. Case studies, testimonials. The more results, the better. A testimony that says the program changed my life does nothing inside a webinar presentation. What builds belief is the specificity and success stories that are actually relatable. A testimonial that says I was doing $6,000 a month before this program, I implemented the system, and 6 months later, I'm consistently doing $28,000 a month. That is what shifts the belief in a room full of skeptical buyers. You use real results to prove that this transformation is achievable. Without specific proof from real clients, the presentation has no foundation to sell from. If you have at least 2 or 3 results you can speak about, you have enough to build a strong webinar presentation. If you have all 4 of those, you are already in a position where a properly built webinar funnel can produce significant results. Here's what that actually looks like in numbers. A coaching business doing $50,000 a month and a properly built webinar system running consistently should be doing $100,000 to $250,000 a month within 6 months with the webinar funnel. The coaches who qualify for this and they're not running a webinar at all are leaving $50,000 to $100,000 in monthly revenue on the table. But not every coaching business is ready for the webinar funnel. Let's go deeper into who should not be running webinars. If you're still testing your offer, you are not ready yet. A webinar funnel will not fix an offer that is not proven. Here's what happens when coaches ignore this. You spend weeks building the registration page, the email sequences, the show up sequence, and the post-webinar follow-up. You then run the webinar and then you discover in the Q&A or in the follow-up that the offer is a problem. The market is not responding to what you're selling and now you have to rebuild everything. Get the offer converting through simpler and faster feedback loops first, DM funnel, a simple VSL, or one-on-one sales calls. Once the offer is consistently selling, then you build a conversion system around it to scale it even further. If you have no audience or very little audience, the problem is not the conversion system. You don't have enough people seeing your offer. No webinar strategy will fix the traffic problem. The funnel can only work with an already existing audience. The coaches who run webinars with no audience or very little audience end up in a room with 12 people, pitch to 8 who stay to the end, and maybe they close 1 or 2 at most. The solution is not a better webinar, it is to continue building the audience that fills the room. If you have no client results, you cannot build the webinar presentation correctly. The entire architecture and structure of a webinar funnel is built around the transformation that your clients will get. Without real results to point to, the most important part of the presentation has nothing to run on. And that is not something you can work around. Get results for your clients first, even if that means working with your first few clients at a reduced price to build the proof that you need. If you're under $10,000 a month in consistent revenue, the webinar funnel is not the right move yet. The complexity and the time investment involved in building and running this system correctly is not justified at this stage. There are simpler mechanisms that you can use to grow your business right now. If none of that describes you, this next part is for you. Here's what you're leaving on the table by not running a webinar. If you have a proven offer, an audience that trusts you, consistent revenue, and results you can point to, you're in the position that most coaches will never reach. The only thing missing right now is converting more of that audience. Coaches in your position who build a webinar are typically double the revenue within 6 months. Right now, you're generating revenue through whatever sales process you have in place. Some of it is, working and it's converting the audience properly, but you also have, more room for improvement. Most of your audience isn't being converted. Every webinar you don't run is a room full of people that know you, trust you, and could have said yes to your offer, but you're just not taking advantage of this segment of your audience because you're not running a webinar. The coaches in your position who build the system first are going to pull ahead, not because they have a better offer, they have a better program, or their solution is better, and it's simply because they built the conversion system that turns what they already have into predictable, scalable revenue. If you're doing $30,000 a month or more, you have a proven offer, you have a real audience and results, you already have everything that you need in order for this system to work. The only thing left is to start building it. And that is exactly what we do. We look at your offer, your audience, your current setup, and we build the entire webinar funnel for you, start to finish. Every page, every sequence, and every component. The link to book a call is in the description below. We get on a call, we look at your specific situation, and tell you what needs to be built. Now, one thing that I would like to say is that building out this webinar funnel is very time intensive and it requires a lot of attention to detail. I need to understand your market, your niche, and your offer in order to be able to deliver you the best result possible. So I can only work with a limited amount of coaches every single month. And even though I have team members, virtual assistants, and AI tools to help me accelerate the process of delivering this for you specifically, I can only work with a limited amount of coaching businesses because it does require a lot of involvement and time investment on my end. So again, if you want to work with me specifically and talk about potentially adding this into your coaching business, make sure that you book a call.